Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Timeline Astrology February 2022 forecast. My name is Gary O'Toole, and before we jump into the forecast for each sign for the month, just to note that I do use the Sidereal zodiac. If you're used to using your tropical zodiac, you just need to subtract 23 degrees from your tropical. So that usually means that it's the sign before your tropical signs, if you use those. So for example, if you've got Aries rising and or moon sign, that would be Pisces rising and or moon sign, depending. So there is an overlap, and there's a 6-degree overlap at the moment, but when you were born, it might have been a 7-degree overlap. So depending on that, you need to obviously adjust. So without further ado, let's get on with the forecast for February, starting with the sign Aries. So Aries, for Aries rising and or Aries moon sign. Aries, this is all about you going for something you believe in and following through and making it happen. And all of the planets are in a position to help you make things happen from February onwards. So this is a great time for you, Aries. Your ruling planet Mars is moving towards its exaltation sign. It's moving together with Venus also. So you really do need to be mindful of whatever you're doing, that you're not burning bridges and bulldozing your way through where you might affect your partner or other people in a big way that could challenge them. And if you're mindful of that, if you're willing to compromise while doing what you need to do and feeling that energy and enthusiasm, you can achieve so much in February. As things slowly turn around in February, especially the first week of February, it might feel a bit stuck because Mercury's stationing direct in your 10th house of action, of career, of life direction. And so this sense of you moving forward is really slowly starting to turn around, but it's not actually moving as yet until we get into the month. So together with the fact that Mercury is also with Saturn and Pluto and the new moon on the 1st of February, all in Capricorn, your 10th sign, this is very much focused on your professional life, Aries. So whatever you're doing, make sure that you make the most of this and do something with it, because if you're not using these energies productively, you're likely to express them destructively. And especially, like I said, in your relationships, because Venus is really hampered in all of this as it conjuncts Mars by the middle of February. Then with Mars moves into Capricorn by the end of February. And so Venus is, at a loss here, and it's overcome by this harsh energy of Mars and Saturn, with Saturn in Capricorn and all the planets gathering here. And so again, although this is great for your work and professional life and all of that, that is not necessarily the best for relationships and the softer, quote unquote, areas of your life. So just be mindful of not burning bridges, as I said, and, go for it. Now, the long-term picture here and the sort of the light at the end of the tunnel or on the horizon with that Jupiter-Neptune conjunction coming into your 11th house is very much about you also looking beyond your long-term plans and willing to let go of them and surrender those in the next few months. But in February, because it's so gung-ho and you making things happen, it's not necessarily where your mind is at. Your mind is really focused on what you believe is possible and what you need to do and the steps that you need to put in place and the plans you need to make something happen. And ultimately, like I said, Jupiter Neptune, as they move into your 12th house by April, will show that there's actually a need for surrender, to whatever you're doing now, whatever you're planning, whatever goals you have, that you obviously have to let those go at some point as well. So the new moon is on the 1st of February, as I said, and it's in your 10th house, and it's a new start for you in terms of anything you're doing, but especially in your work. So this is a lot more positive in terms of things starting to move forward now for you. And all of the planets, every single one of them by the 4th of February will be moving direct. And again, it's picking up pace throughout the month and it's getting quite heated too, but there's a lot of energy and focus. It's like if you're not focusing this energy and working on something, it's going to work itself on you. It's going to do a job on you, as the saying goes. So make sure that you're doing something, you're being productive, you're active, you're using all of this energy and you're focusing all of it, especially by the end of February. I want to highlight the full moon on the 16th of February. So the full moon is in your ninth sign. If I show you here, your fifth sign, with your ruler and Venus in your ninth. And this therefore really highlights this trine, this fiery trine. And what's a trine? It's this, triangle, trine, Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. And it very much fuels your sense of purpose, your sense of who you are and what you want to do. But again, see Venus here at the same degree, the exact same degree as Mars around Valentine's Day as well. That is quite, passionate. Yes, great, but also volatile. So be, really mindful in all your engagements, in all your interactions with everyone, not just your partner, but with everyone at this time. Because when you feel so gung-ho and passionate about what you feel is right for you, you could easily find problems in your relationship. So that's the month of February. It's a hot, passionate, really purposeful month for you, especially by the end of the month. If I show you this, when then planets and especially your ruler move into Capricorn, exalted. So here we go. From the 26th, Mars moves in, the 27th, Venus moves in, the moon also moves in, and you have all of these planets now gathered in just two signs. And these two signs are your work life and your gains and your long-term objectives and goals, 11th sign, as well as your friends and networks and any kind of associations. So with so much emphasis on just two areas of your life that are very sort of public and career orientated, you could obviously lose balance very easily by overly focusing on just these two. And again, this could be where you find that, relationships are challenged. And again, the softer areas of your life, your home life, are challenged because you're just doing so much work and focusing so much on that. So as long as you're mindful of that and you can balance those tendencies, you can make so much happen at this time, Aries. And as always, I wish you the very best for the month ahead. So moving on to the next sign, and that's Taurus. You're really focusing on other people in many ways and your bigger dreams and aspirations and more meaningful pursuits in February, but you're having to negotiate an awful lot with others who have their own set of beliefs and own desires and own needs, because Mars is conjunct Venus, your ruling planet, in your eighth sign for most of the month. And so this is a bit tricky because you're having to negotiate either joint resources, joint bank accounts, joint values, whatever it is. And it's a very passionate mix. So it's like coming together with a partner, for example, and feeling like you've got a lot of passion, but you've got a lot of things to work out as you're trying to figure out their motives, because Mars is overpowering Venus. You're feeling overpowered by this energy. Eighth house is also about deep things that you can't control necessarily, or you're not in complete control over. Eighth house, for example, represents paying your taxes. And, there's nothing you can do about that. You have to do it. And if you don't do it, it will catch up with you sooner or later. And eighth house kind of represents those things that can catch up with us if we're not really mindful of what we're doing. So be mindful of what you're doing, but also be mindful of what someone else is doing. Because it's a hidden area of your chart. You might not be 100% clear about what the other person's motives are, for example. So just be a bit open-minded about these things. The whole theme of you, finding yourself and negotiating with others and finding out who you are when you are with another is a big theme for you right now and has been for the last year because of the nodes. And now that your ruler is coming together with Mars, and as they both move into Capricorn, your ninth sign, it's about feeling more hopeful and buoyant in terms of pushing things forward in a more practical way. On the 1st of February, there is the new moon in your ninth sign. It's conjunct Saturn, so Sun, Saturn, Moon all together, as well as Mercury and Pluto. There's a lot of emphasis on travel. There's a lot of emphasis on study, on opening your mind, on thinking about higher purposeful things in your life, not just, dealing with your partner's issues or your joint issues whether it's monetary issues or whatever, relationship issues. There's something more meaningful here for you as well to negotiate and to plan ahead in February. And things are certainly moving ahead as well, because all of the planets are going to start moving ahead from the 4th of February. And I'll show you that after the new moon. We have Mercury station, and we have it conjunct Pluto, of course, and Saturn Sun conjunct on the 4th. So there's some, power dynamics going on for sure. And there's some things to deal with in the home. So there might be changes in the home, or there might be some struggles at home. Or there might be some traveling going on as well, because your 4th Lord Sun is with your 9th Lord in the 9th house. So negotiating any kind of plans to travel and things like that will be an important thing. But to be really patient as Mercury stations conjunct Pluto, and the kind of unforeseen circumstances that might crop up at this time. The long-term picture then is Jupiter and Neptune also coming together in Aquarius later on in April as they move toward each other and then move on into your 11th sign. So there's a need to look at what you're doing in the world and what you would like to gain from what you're doing, your hopes and dreams and aspirations in the long term, whatever you're finding more meaningful now. So as Venus goes through this whole section of the sky in the 8th, then the 9th in February, you're looking at really having to negotiate a lot, especially in the beginning and most of the beginning of February, and then into the end of February, then looking for something more meaningful and purposeful and directed for yourself, whether it's again traveling or studying or some higher mind activity, some just thinking more philosophically about things as well, finding more meaning in things. So Taurus, as always, I wish you the very best for the month ahead. For Gemini rising and or moon sign, Gemini, you are having to go through a bit of a tricky period here in the beginning of February, because your ruler Mercury is stationing, slowing down, or appearing to slow down and station direct. Now that's a good thing ultimately, because you can now start to move forward with plans. But where it's doing it is in an area that you don't really see very clearly. It's the 8th house, where all of the planets are gathering in February, including, the sun and moon for the new moon on the 1st, also Saturn, Pluto, hemming in Mercury at some point again as it stations direct and moves forward. So whatever plans you're moving forward with, there are some unforeseeable circumstances, some unknowns that you have to negotiate with, and some things, whether they're known or not, that you might not feel completely in control over. And of course, Capricorn is generally about, systems and government systems and rules and regulations that we all have to adhere to. And because it's your 8th house, Gemini, this kind of Mercury retrograde station and then slow move forward with Pluto and Saturn there is showing you that, you're going to have to be patient in February. Whatever plans that are in place, whatever you would like to plan in the future, and whatever anyone else is doing around those as well, you have to be really open-minded with all of these things. Now, together with the fact that Venus and Mars are conjunct in your 7th sign of the other as well, that's leading to a lot of passion. But Venus in this case is overcome by Mars, and Mars in that case can show this kind of brute force and this lack of accord and lack of compromise. Venus is all about tact and diplomacy. Mars is like brute force, and it's overcoming Venus. So be really mindful in your relationships and patient with other people, I would say, during this quite uncertain time in the beginning of February. But also realize that there's a lot of things you can plan and start to do now as all of the planets start to move forward from the 4th of February, including your ruling planet, Mercury. So I'll show you that after the new moon on the 1st, the 4th, you see your ruler Mercury stationed direct. It is, yes, still conjunct Pluto. So there's all of these unknowables going on. The Saturn Sun conjunction is exact at the same time. And there's a lot of power struggle going on in more obvious ways in the world around us. But again, how that impacts you personally can bring up a lot of issues like power struggles within yourself, and also in relationship, more especially because of all of these planets lining up in the 7th and the 8th signs. So any kind of power struggles between what you want and what you need to do is relevant really throughout the month of February, but especially in the beginning of February, the first week. I'm going to move it forward as things start to lighten up and break up, as the moon then moves across the nodes and breaks this formation of this nodal axis with all the planets on one side, which itself is a very lopsided way to look at the zodiac. The way we kind of have this all or nothing approach, or my way or the highway kind of thing. We have to be really mindful of these tendencies. And then I want to highlight the full moon on the 16th of February, when the sun then has moved into Aquarius, your ninth sign. So this now is showing you the light on the horizon. Now, with the ninth sign so active, with the sun here for the following month from mid-February, and Jupiter-Neptune here for some time, there's this sense of a new buoyancy, especially with Jupiter aspecting your sign, Gemini. There's a sense of some new hope on the horizon. And while you're looking forward at that, I mean, it's going to take you out of this period now where it's been quite challenging in your relationships and dealing with the unknown. Keep your eye on the prize, as it were, is what I would say, Gemini. This full moon is really focusing you on what you want to do and what inspires you in anything that you do. And though there's a very heated situation going on with you and your partner or other people in general, and other things in general, again, that you have no control over, there's also now at the end of the month, something more purposeful and hopeful coming in to really help you move forward and light the way for you. Let me show you the end of the month as well, because we have the moon then cross over the nodes again and join the planets as Venus and Mars, both with the moon, all move into your eighth sign. Now, at the end of February, that means all of the planets are in just two signs in your chart, your eighth and ninth sign. And again, that ninth sign, lighting your way forward, looking at that light on the horizon is so important for you, Gemini, to keep that in your mind and in your mind's eye during this period, because all of this gathering in your eighth sign with your ruling planet, with Mars, Venus, with Saturn, Pluto, with the moon as well on the 27th, 28th, the end of the month is like really full on eighth house activity. And that's everything that you're not in control over. Everything that's, to do with your partner and their resources, for example, or having to, pay your taxes, or having to deal with some issue that's out of your control, like, well, a pandemic, for example. All of these things that you don't have any control over and make you feel insecure is really where all your focus is. And again, if you can keep some of that focus, as is the potential here with the Sun, Jupiter, and Neptune, on something more purposeful and meaningful and hopeful moving forward, you can get through this period in February with a smile on your face and a lot of grace. So Gemini, I hope that's been of help. As always, I wish you the very best for the month ahead. For Cancer rising and or moon sign. Cancer, this is a month for you to be really mindful in your relationship and in relating to anyone, because all of the planets are gathering in your seventh sign, right opposite your sign. And so you're really focusing on the other, whether it's a partner or any other, or the world out there. And as the new moon on the 1st of February then leads to Mercury stationing direct, slowly moving forward, conjunct Pluto, later conjunct Saturn, and Sun Saturn conjunct at this time also. Really, February is a time for you to be really mindful of things coming to a head, and especially in the coming weeks, as Mars by the end of February and Venus both at the same degree join and all move into Capricorn. So all of the planets are in Capricorn and Aquarius, your seventh and eighth signs, Cancer. So this is going to be quite intense in terms of a relationship issue and some things to work out, and hopefully feeling the hope and optimism that they will be worked out, as Jupiter and Neptune are joined by the sun later on in the month, as this sense of this light on the horizon, despite this sort of dealing with the issues right now with your partner, that there is something opening up in February, that in fact all of the planets are moving forward after the 4th of February, and that you too can move forward and plan ahead and schedule and think about things in that way, even though there are still things to deal with, of course, Cancer. So just being really mindful of that really all month. On the 1st of February, it is the new moon in Capricorn in your seventh sign. So there's this kind of recalibration going on in your relationship anyway, and really good to take a bit of time for that, slow down, take a pause and rethink these things. And, you've been obviously reflecting a lot on your partner and relationship anyway in the last few months with Mercury retrograde. So as it's now slowly stationing direct a few days after the new moon in your seventh sign, this is the time to start planning ahead now. Now, there are some unknowables and all of that going on with Pluto conjunct Mercury and Sun Saturn conjunction. A lot of power struggles that are possible right now. But again, there's something opening up, there's something moving forward despite this. And the other thing to be really mindful of course, is that Mars and Venus are both together for the month, most of the month. And they're even moving along at the same degree for most of the month, especially from mid-month. And then at the end of the month, they both move into Capricorn, where Mars is particularly strong. Now, when that happens, when Mars is strong and overcoming Venus, as it usually does, i.e. tact and decorum can be thrown out the window, and Mars energy can really be like brute force. And although Cancer, you are, Cancer, you're a caring sign, you think about others. In this instance, with Mars going into your seventh sign from the end of the month, and especially into April, March and April, then it's about really, dealing with your partner without being overly aggressive and things like that, or, passive aggressive, which is another possibility where your partner could come, at you as well in terms of being quite aggressive. That's something that could happen. Or your children, which is the fifth house, Mars for you. So whatever you're doing, or especially around your child and any kind of future plans at all, just be really mindful in your engagement with your partner, because it could easily blow up by the end of the month. And it's kind of building into that. It's almost like building like a volcano, like an earthquake is about to erupt by the end of February into March and April. So just make sure that you are, I guess if you could think about it as a volcano, that you're at a good distance from the volcano. That Capricorn is the ability to actually detach despite all the intensity, despite the passions that you feel and the potential conflicts that you have. Capricorn is the ability to move back and take a step back for a moment or two. So that's what I would say about the month of February for you, Cancer. Noting here that your moon, the ruler of your sign, is moving beyond the nodes and these major, themes that have been going on for over a year now with the nodes in your fifth and 11th sign. And that's very much to do with your long-term objectives and what you would love to happen. And especially if you have children and how that impacts your friends and your objectives, all of these things have a big impact. But the moon then moves over that axis again. But as it does so, and leading up to the full moon, there's a potential for obviously, finding more balance, like a counterbalance to all of that emphasis on the partner and the struggles. And you being looking after yourself and a lot of self-care and looking at what's important to you, especially around this full moon, around the middle of the month after Valentine's Day. But at the same time, you see here Mars and Venus are at the same degree at this point for Valentine's and the days after this, and really for a whole month. So you're really there's no avoiding the issues with your partner. If you can think you can put it off, well, it's not going to happen that way. Again, what I would say to you is if you could just stand back from it, not avoid the issues, but be detached enough to deal with them, is what I would say. And especially around this full moon, as things get really heated up, a lot of passion could be expressed there as well. Now, when you see the moon at the end of the month, your ruling planet, the moon, move beyond the nodes again. And on the 26th, 27th, all of the planets, Venus and Mars and the moon, all join Saturn, Mercury, and Pluto in Capricorn, your seventh sign. So all of the planets are basically lined up in your seventh and eighth sign at this stage. And this is when it can really get really heated. So be really mindful of how you're engaging with not just your partner, but any other. And then again, you can assuage a lot of the potential fallout from this. And the potential here, though, is for being very productive and getting things done and really focusing all your energy at getting over a problem too. That's another great expression of these planets gathering and looking to the horizon, the light on the horizon here, and something that maybe you hadn't even planned for opening up for you, something coming out of this conflict that can actually bring you forward and will bring you forward, in fact, into a more hopeful space. later on in the coming weeks. So Cancer, I hope that's been of help. As always, I wish you the very best for the month ahead. For Leo rising and or moon sign, all of the planets are gathering in your 5th, 6th, and 7th houses in February, and especially the 6th house by the end of the month, with your ruler, the Sun, conjunct Saturn just after the new moon in your 6th house, and Mercury stationing retrograde, very closely conjunct Pluto. This is a lot of power struggle in your 6th house, which is very much to do with co-workers, employees, if you have any, and just a sense of angst in general, a need to get over something. And yet Saturn is so powerful here that ultimately you actually will be able to do what you need to do and overcome any kind of enemy. And of course, all enemies are our own inner demons. And Leo, you're learning this lesson really quite acutely at this stage, and especially leading into the end of February and into March and April, where Saturn and Mars come together in your 6th house. This is such an important time for you, Leo, to overcome some challenge. Again, it might express itself through a co-worker, a relationship like that, or an employee, or a relative even, or anyone where you just look at them as the enemy. And the 6th house is open enemies, it's called. But really, again, it's just our own inner demons that we're dealing with. And if you can really channel all of this energy and focus in overcoming your own shortcomings, this could be such a great time for you. The potential for it to be conflicted as well, of course, is there. And as Mercury stations on the 4th after the new moon on the 1st, you know, your mind is sort of adjusting to all of these different things that are happening, all of the unknowables, all of the unseen, all of the inner angst that you have around these issues. And whoever's bringing them to you, they're just the outer casing of what is, you know, the more important fundamental issue. And really, what is the issue? Again, the issue is your weaknesses. The 6th house is the house of weaknesses and of your strengths. And we only develop strengths by overcoming our weaknesses, which is why we see both in the 6th house. So this practically would mean having to look after your daily routines, of course, and health regimes, your health in terms of eating right, exercising, not overdoing it, not underdoing it, just the sweet spot in exercise, for example. The new moon on the 1st, you know, would show that maybe you need to recalibrate this as Mercury slowly turns around, and maybe rethink how you approach this area of your life. And also your everyday routines in terms of your work life. So the everyday tasks that you have to perform, all of these things are kind of coming to a head now. And whatever struggle you might be dealing with, whether it's a personal inner struggle or it's a more obvious outer struggle with a coworker or something that's happening at work, use it to your advantage, I would say, because these are also very powerful times for you. Now, one of the times where you might feel this intensely, more intensely, is just after the new moon. The new moon on the 1st, and then a few days later, the Mercury retrograde stations then on the 4th as the Sun, your ruler, conjuncts Saturn. So this is like full on. This is like a major power struggle between you and another. And so obviously a partner in this case could be how it comes in the form of, and just generally dealing with others, you might see the other as the enemy or as bringing a problem. Your partner could bring you a problem, or someone could bring you a problem you have to deal with and you don't really want to deal with it, or you can't avoid dealing with it. So these are the issues in February, and especially the first week of February. The other thing that's happening, of course, is that Mars and Venus are coming together by exact degree and both moving into your 6th sign by the end of the month on the 26th and 27th, Mars and Venus. So Mars and Venus are actually moving together from mid-month all the way through to mid-March. So for a whole month, you've got this energy of Mars and Venus. Now, in the 5th sign, it's very much about children or creativity, creative self-expression, going for something you want, being passionate about what you want to do. And of course, that could add to the kind of conflict that's occurring and building in your relationships with other people who might not want you to do what you want to do. So Leo, it's important to be mindful of all of these tricky dynamics, I would say. And yet at the same time, there's a real strong need to go for something you want and to overcome the obstacles to getting what you want. February is not really the best time of the year to, compromise and to have a lot of tact and decorum. Venus is really hampered. Although we do need to obviously be mindful of our relationships and not burn any bridges, it's a great time for going for something you want. And you might offend some people, you might rub some people up the wrong way. But hey, if you're aware of it and you're aware of what you're doing and you don't mean to do that, you're not purposely out to get anyone, it's not going to be as challenging as it would be if you were very purposefully feeling very angsty and taking it out on others all the time. So that's something just to be mindful of for the first week, especially, I would say, but really from this whole period as Mars and Venus get closer and closer together. So let me show you that as they get closer by mid-month. The moon moves over the nodes by the 10th and into the 11th, and then has broken this spell of the Kal Sarpa Yoga of the planets lined up on one side of the nodes, North Node Rahu, South Node Ketu. 4th and 10th houses are really activated and have been for a year now in your chart, Leo. So this is like getting this sense of balance again in your home and work life because they've been imbalanced. Too much emphasis on work or maybe working from home, whatever it might be, there's a lot of imbalances here. So with all the other planets lined up on the other side, again, 5th, 6th, and 7th house, you're going for something you really want and you're having to overcome an obstacle and do it. And this could be more extreme. So the moon breaking that spell is good in terms of finding a counterbalance to this. Now, by the 12th of February, you have the sun, your ruler, move into your 7th house. And so this kind of breaks this kind of conflict quite a lot. And then a few days later, on the 16th, we have the full moon in your sign, Leo. So now this is the time to negotiate. This is the time to find compromise, to look at what you want and look at what the other person needs. You're still having to deal with some issues, of course, and you're looking at the Mars-Venus exact conjunction now throughout this whole period, the whole Valentine period as well, and for the following month. So it's this really passionate drive for going for something you really want, deeply want, and also having to overcome an obstacle, but then also having to negotiate with another and getting what you want. So again, as long as you're aware of all of those dynamics, there's a lot of potential here for you, Leo. And this full moon is showing that kind of increased potential as well for going for something you want. It's a very passionate full moon. The moon then moves on to the other side of the nose again, and then kind of re-triggers this Kal Sarpa Yoga, this serpent of time, this slippery sort of imbalance in the zodiac with all of the planets now on one side again. And then in a few days, on the 27th, Mars and Venus and the moon all join Saturn, Pluto, Mercury in Capricorn in your 6th sign. So by the 27th of February, all of the planets, pretty much all of them, are in the 6th sign, and the other planets are in the 7th sign. So again, it's like conflict within your life, within your personal being, and having to overcome those conflicts. And if there are any planets that could do that, it's Mars and Saturn. Mars is exalted here. Saturn rules this place. So they're coming together in a really powerful way now in the coming weeks. And it's an important time for you to actually use this energy productively, because otherwise it will really get destructive if you don't use it productively, Leo. Again, looking at someone else as an enemy when, it's not about them, it's about your own challenges that you're having to overcome, any shortcomings, and negotiate all the time, because Venus is so hampered here that you don't want to burn any bridges either. You might want to look for these people and relationships again for help, or for whatever reason, and especially, of course, your partner, dealing with your relationship issues that are really coming to a head in many ways by the end of February. It's like that kind of passionate expression that then could spill over into kind of arguing. You could see it like that. So Leo, great potentials in February, and also many pitfalls to be aware of. I hope that's been of help. And as always, I wish you the very best for the month ahead. For Virgo Rising and Virgo moon sign, your ruling planet Mercury is stationing in the coming days. So combined with the new moon and your ruling planet stationing with Pluto and the Saturn Sun conjunction around the new moon, this is a turning point, of course, but it's also a slow turning point, as many turning points in life are. So, Virgo, you might be feeling this intensely in terms of your future direction, what you would like to do. The fifth house is where all of this is happening. The new moon on the 1st of February, your ruler Mercury stationing on the 4th of February, Saturn, Sun conjunct at that time also, and Pluto thrown in to the mix for good measure. So there's a lot of unknowables here. There's a lot of things that you have to obviously plan around, things that you cannot control necessarily. And there is a sense of perhaps excitement, but also nervousness, some fear mixed in with that. As you might say, that excitement is just the flip side of anxiety. But it very much depends on how you label it, so you might be labeling it fear, but someone else might label it excitement. Whatever it is, there's a sense of newness, of something turning a corner. And although it's a slow turnaround and you don't see exactly yet what's on the other side or what's around the corner, it is at least turning a corner. So that's something to be mindful of in February. Now, at the same time, you have Venus and Mars come together in your fourth house throughout the month. By mid-month, they will be exactly conjunct, and for the next month until the middle of March, and they move alongside each other all of this time from your fourth house to your fifth house, Virgo. So this is very much about home life, what you would like to do as well, not just in terms of what would make you happy in your home setup or where you would want to live, but also what would make you happy in anything you would do in the future. So this also ties in with obviously more personal things in terms of relationships at home, a partner, children, these kinds of things, but also any kind of creative self-expression or output. I think these things are really important. But of course, looking at the long term, the bigger picture for this year, Virgo, this is very much about what it takes to make those things happen. You might have this inspiration to do something or other, or to have a child, for example. You have to actually, when you have the child, change the diapers, do all of that stuff. That's the sixth house, and that's where things are moving to. And so Jupiter and Neptune are here already. Saturn will come here in the summer. And this turnaround is pointing to that in the longer term. So it's obviously all about what it takes to make something happen in your life. And, what is it you would like to make happen in the first place? What would you like to do? And so this is very much the question to be asking in February, and why you would do anything, because Venus and Mars coming together in your fourth house, it's Sagittarius. Why you would do anything, it's because it would give your life meaning. So feeling inspired, feeling, maybe a little bit anxious about things, feeling like things are turning a corner, feeling the kind of heightened anticipation in the air, hanging very densely in the air as well because of Saturn and Pluto, and yet still there's an anticipation. And then thinking about the long-term strategies and goals that you have and what you need to implement to make those things a reality. These are the things to be thinking about in February, Virgo. Around the new moon on the 1st of February, like I said, this is the kind of turning point, and it's a new start, and it's a time to still yourself and to prepare for that movement forward. And then let me bring it forward, and we'll see how by the full moon on the 16th in your 12th house, it's very much about what you need to let go of in that process. The sun has moved into your 6th house, highlighting the balance between everyday concerns and work and routines versus on this full moon on the 16th, your ability to just let go of all the details. And because Virgo, you're very detail orientated, and all of these plans, and every time Mercury goes retrograde, it means that there's a lot to figure out always. And when Mercury's retrograde is even more. And it's, part of your makeup, part of who you are is to actually reflect and review all of the things that you're doing in life, where you're going in life, and your career especially, every time Mercury retrogrades. But when we add the fact that this time of year, it's again the sun moving into Aquarius, your sixth sign, what is it going to take for me to actually make this happen? This is one of the key things to ask yourself in February, Virgo. So the last thing I want to point out in the month of February is the moon as it transits back over the lunar nodes, and joins Venus and Mars as they both then move into Capricorn. And so on the 27th, we have all of the planets in just two signs. And these two signs are, again, your fifth and your sixth house. So especially because there's such a gathering in your fifth house, if you have any children at all, there's a lot of attention here that needs to be, balanced with other things. Because if it's like having all your eggs in one basket. If you have any kind of creative project on the go, that's again like having all your eggs in one basket. It all feels a bit maybe pressurized here. There's a lot of passion, and something is very important here. If you have any followers, like online followers, like many people these days, this is like a lot of attention here. Or students, if you're a teacher and you have students, this is certainly all kind of crammed into the fifth house now. But again, because there's so many planets here, there's a stellium, there's 6 planets here by the end of February, and then 3 planets in your 6th house, which means basically practically all of the planets in 2 signs, certainly all the visible planets in just 2 signs. And this is quite, tense, because you're just overly focusing on just 2 areas of your life, and you're not thinking about everything else that's going on. So a good time to perhaps be very mindful of what you're planning and what it's going to take to make that happen, but also to get a balance with maybe having a social life. That's 11th sign opposite the 5th, and also surrendering more, releasing more, retreating more, and having some downtime and some sleep and some good time off, which is the 12th sign. Remember, especially around that full moon on the 16th, that's a good time to kind of maybe have a bit of a downtime. And leading up to that, through Valentine's Day, 14th, 15th, to have a bit of a social life as well, and not just to be focusing on all these kind of work-related issues. So Virgo, that is the month of February. I hope that's been of help. And as always, I wish you the very best for the month ahead. Okay, so on to the next sign now, and that is Libra. For Libra rising and or moon sign, your ruling planet now is getting involved in a very passionate tryst with Mars. So Venus and Mars coming together in your 3rd sign. And then by the end of February, they'll move into your 4th sign. So there's a lot here that feels like there's a lot of passion, but there's a lot that might feel like there's that's at stake here. So, when we think about the 3rd sign, we think about things that are very, personal, like we want ourselves. This is what I want, especially when Mars is there. And with Venus mixed in here and, overcome by Mars in many ways, in the 3rd, which is a Mars domain, in Sagittarius, which is a friendly place for Mars and not for Venus, you could easily, Libra, get thrown into the mix here, where it's like you want something, absolutely you want it, but there's, this sense of you're having to negotiate with other people who want what they want. So your partner, especially as well, is obviously one of those indications, because Mars is your 7th lord. But family matters as well, any kind of thing like that, anything in terms of others, other people, anyone you're coming in contact with now. So just be mindful, I guess, of, the passionate dynamics that are going on here, where for some people that's more than just passion, that's arguing. I guess you could say if you're arguing, that means you're just passionate about it. But for your, more soft nature, Libra, you can really kind of feel a bit kind of at a loss here in many ways. So just be mindful of others, I would say, and how others are affecting you, how other people's energy is impacting you. And at the beginning of the month, all of the planets, and by the end of the month, nearly all the planets are in Capricorn, your 4th sign, with Saturn still casting a very strong aspect onto your sign, Libra. So there's a lot of issues here in the home place. And because Venus and Mars now are going into the 4th house, you're having to negotiate a lot at home. And this could feel a bit tense because when you put all the planets like that in one sign, everyone's jostling for space. And, there's, in other words, you might feel like there's a lot of issues going on in the home and you can't tackle them all because it's not clear to you how you can kind of make room for everything. So together with the fact that there's the new moon on the 1st, then there's Mercury stationing direct on the 4th with Saturn, Sun conjunct, and Pluto, Mercury very closely conjunct. There's a lot of kind of power plays and power struggles going on in your home environment that you need to be mindful of. And even if you are at home on your own the whole time, it's still a lot of power struggles going on in terms of what you would like to make happen, what would make you happy, who would make you happy, your plans, your general direction life anyway. That's very much 4th sign. And because it's opposite the 10th sign as well, which is your career, and the new moon, which is your 10th lord, it's all about work, is in your 4th sign. So this new moon on the 1st of February and this upcoming lunar month until the beginning of March is obviously very much about you focusing on home, but also focusing on career, and maybe having to work from home, or maybe having to move home because of your work, or maybe having to think about how you can find more balance between these things, work-life balance. So a lot going on in your 4th. Now, the other sign that's having a lot going on, and will have more and more going on as the months progress in 2022, is the 5th sign. And it's very much about once you have that stability and happiness sorted out at home, or any kind of blocks to your happiness removed in your home and in your heart, not just at home, it's very much about how you feel. So any removal of any kind of obstacles right now in February will only help you progress further in the year as planets file into your 5th sign. And so, of course, the 5th sign is all about how you express yourself, how you express your heart and your desires and your very personal desires, not what anyone else wants, what you want. And because Libra, you're all about compromise, it's an important thing to ask yourself at this time, again, what is it that would make you happy? And, that's the thing to focus on more so than anything right now. What do you want? What would make you happy? And how can you express that? Now, Jupiter is here with Neptune already, so there's a high ideal, there's high stakes perhaps as well. You might feel the sense of more optimism here as well. You might feel that you can create something. You have more of a creative urge. Jupiter's aspect to your sign as well is helping out enormously with Saturn's concurrent aspect. So there's a lot of potential here as well for you, Libra, at this time. And as Mercury now stations at the beginning of February and starts to slowly move forward, again, that could be the sense of things moving forward, plans moving forward, especially around the home and travel. And then as they again subsequently move into your 5th sign, the sun will move in by mid-month, highlighting this area of your life, really focusing on, if you have children, focusing on your relationship with them, or if you wish to have children, if it's a creative endeavor, something that you would like to do, if it's your students, or if even just your online followers. 5th house is very much about the next generation and the next whatever. So it's very much about you planning the future. So there's a sense of, I guess, you having to keep an eye on the long-term plan that you have, the ideal that you have in your mind's eye, and the light on the horizon, while having to negotiate some tricky transits here in your home environment in February. And if you keep your eye on that long-term plan and the thing that inspires you to move forward and to keep moving forward, the home situations themselves will work out. Things will work them way out. So there's no need to worry about these things. Another thing that the 4th house represents in a practical way is your vehicle. Like if you're driving around and there might be some issue with your vehicle right now. So just be mindful of that as well, that, Mercury retrograde, perhaps it's not the best time to buy a new vehicle or even bring it in for repairs, because there's always some hiccup with Mercury retrograde. Once it stations though by the 4th, that would be a better time to actually go ahead and, make the adjustments. So again, vehicle, home, your heart, what makes you happy. It's interesting to note when, you tie the vehicle with your heart and happiness, because 4th house is all about comfort. Your home obviously is one major comfort, but also the vehicle. So the moon then moves beyond the nodes and breaks this spell of the Kal Sarpa, which is bringing up a lot of issues for the last year around finances. So that's something to be mindful of really throughout February and March into April, because it's more intensified now with all the planets lined up on one side. And so, for example, if you have something you really want to go for, you really want to do, for example, if somebody wants to move home, or if someone wants to create something new, like they're working on something, and you're putting all your eggs into one basket and you're thinking only about that thing, that's kind of like that way of expressing the nodes in that kind of like, there's this intensity. It's like, I really want this thing so bad, but it feels like all of my focus is on that and I'm not getting a balance in my life at all. So think about that in terms of, trying to think about other things in your life, not just whatever the intense focus is on right now. The moon then is full on the 16th. So this is obviously opposite the sun. The sun then therefore has gone into your fifth house by the 12th of February, and it's going to conjoin Jupiter and Neptune. And this is, not just optimistic, that's maybe even like over the top optimistic when you have Jupiter Sun together. In your fifth sign, this is a lot more hopeful by the end of February. And things are starting to break up now and move forward in your fourth house, the home. And at the same time, Venus and Mars are coming together kind of at loggerheads, really, loggerheads for the next month, from the middle of February into the middle of March. This is something to be really mindful again in any kind of engagement, in any kind of communications, especially if you're sending off that email in a very sort of in a rush. Just be mindful of that, I would say, throughout the month of February. Now, the fifth house, though, is again the kind of where you're going long term with this. And this is again something you want to create. And of course, you might want to create something that's near and dear to you, but you also want to think about that in terms of its impact on your community around you and other people in general, as well as friends and any kind of associations that you have in your community. And that's what this full moon is all about. It's about tapping into not just me, mine, but also them, theirs. And thinking about how to get a balance between these things, as well as your home life and your more public life anyway, and your own desires versus other people's, and your own values versus other people's, your own money versus other people's. All of these issues are kind of like really needed to work out right now. And again, because it's so lopsided at the moment, it could be tilted on one side in favor. And, that could obviously create this kind of extreme. So again, try not to put all of your eggs in one basket. Try not to overemphasize one thing in your life where, neglecting other things, put it that way. So just one more thing to mention by the end of the month is that the moon then crosses the nodes again. And as it does so, it creates this Kal Sarpa yoga again, this kind of really sort of slippery, uncertain period where, again, there's an intensity and an overly focused on just a couple of key areas, and especially by the 27th, because Venus and Mars and the moon all move in together into Capricorn, your fourth house. Now, all of them, nearly all of the planets are in your fourth house, the home. You've got some planets in your fifth, but mostly it's about the home. And so you have to really be mindful of whatever's going on at home right now, whatever plans you're making, just, be mindful of all of the elements that are required, but also be mindful of not really seeing the wood for the trees, because there's just so much going on and you might be, again, overemphasizing this and lose perspective. So try not to lose perspective, try and keep your passions alive, but try and keep the bigger picture in mind all the time. And, don't get lost in the kind of minutiae of, all of these details. And if you can do that, you're going forward, you're thinking about the future, you're thinking more optimistically about what's on the horizon, and without avoiding the issues that are to be dealt with right now, of course, as well. So Libra, hope that's been of help. As always, I wish you the very best for the month ahead. And moving on to the next sign now, and that's Scorpio. For Scorpio rising and or moon sign, Scorpio, your ruling planet is very strong in February and March into April, and it's moving into its exaltation, its strongest position in many ways. And of course, exaltation doesn't mean just, oh, it's all great, because Mars is energy and willpower and vitality and all of that good stuff in your third sign. But it also could be a bit too hard to handle. And that's especially the case because Mars is conjunct Venus the whole time. And so other people might find you hard to handle. Your partner especially might find you too hard to handle. You might be saying things that are too abrupt or, too cutting, especially because Mars is starting out with Venus in the second sign, and then it's moving into your third sign. I would be really careful, especially the beginning of the month, right through the month, really, how you communicate. And then later on in the month, and then into March and April, especially how you communicate with the written word and emails and things like that, and just the back and forth. Generally, this whole period, Scorpio, is be mindful of how you're communicating. And at the same time, there's something really important for you to communicate. There's something really important here for you to figure out and to express. So as long as you're mindful of maybe bulldozing your way through this, which could create a lot of problems in your relationships with everybody, but especially with your partner, you could mitigate this an awful lot and use the energy for what it's best for, which is dealing with issues, overcoming issues, building your confidence, self-esteem, expressing yourself clearly without getting, aggressive, and stating what you want quite clearly. Mars is just about at point A stating what you want. It only becomes an argument when at point Z you've like denied what you want the whole time, and then you have to get into an argument about it. So at point A, you just state your case, state what you want, and be very clear about it. No need to argue about it. So Scorpio, a lot of passion here, a lot of passion with Venus and Mars in your second sign, Sagittarius, a lot of passion for something that you want. And also it's going to play out a lot in your home. And whether it's with your relationship with your mother, for example, or actually in your home or around home matters, there's something really important here, because all of these signs, the first, second, third, fourth, they're all the more personal signs. They're all the more intimate, very personal, private things in your life. And when we feel in any way kind of Mars about them, i.e., I want it yesterday, we could get very tense. We could get very frustrated. We're not getting it fast enough. There's some obstacles we have to overcome. So Scorpio, you might feel this need to overcome obstacles, and you might not be very patient when any kind of obstacles in your place. Now, the 1st of February is the new moon in your third, so be very mindful around that time how you're communicating. It may be about simplifying how you communicate, especially with Mercury retrograde, has been moving back here, reviewing how you're communicating. How effective are your communications? And maybe they need a tweak. Together with Pluto, of course, Mercury now stations by the 4th after this new moon, while Saturn and Sun come together by exact degree. So this is quite like a power struggle going on here. And even if you were never to communicate a word, there's a power struggle going on. There's something in terms of what you want to express, and you're having to meet that in some sort of struggle. So it could be the struggle within yourself, though, that you never have it out with anyone, as it were. You might not ever, you don't have to even meet anyone or speak to anyone during this whole period. And there's this kind of struggle going on inside you, which is the third sign is very much not just about how you communicate with others, but how you communicate with yourself. It's that inner dialogue. So thinking about things in terms of Pluto, for example, the saboteur, the subconscious, any kind of thing that is in your ways, any kind of block that you're putting in your own way, basically, and overcoming these now in the coming days in February because of that turnaround of Mercury, as the new moon is kind of reinstigated this, and getting you to really think about what's important here. Now, the third sign is also about sex. So thinking about sexual energy and your libido and how you use your energy, whether it's through sex or through creating something, it's energy is energy. So it's a good thing to think about where are you placing all of your focus and energy, and how are you expressing your energy, and how do you want to continue that down that road. And down the road, the bigger issue, of course, is home, because Jupiter and Neptune are in your 4th house. The Sun will move into your 4th house by mid-month, and Saturn will move in here in the summer. So it's basically the more important longer term thing is about home and happiness, and your mother relationship and all of that is part of that. But whether she's alive or not, it's about your happiness and your ability to mother yourself too. So of course, whatever you would want to go for, whatever you would want to grab with both hands, that's third sign. You'd only do that because you think it's going to make you happy. That's 4th sign. So thinking about what is it that makes you happy, what inspires you, and thinking about that in the more long term is important right now as well, with Jupiter and Neptune here in your fourth. So moving it on, I'm going to just mention the nodes because they are important here in your first and seventh sign, and they are creating this interesting dynamic between you and the other, whether it's you and your partner or any other. Together with the Venus-Mars conjunction, this is where it's kind of coming to a head in many ways in February and March and into April, because this is the last few weeks of the nodes in your first and seventh. And again, because Venus and Mars are coming together by exact degree throughout this period, it's like it's come to a head. And that means having to find the balance between your own needs and the other, you and your partner, you and whoever other. So that's something to be thinking about long term over the next few weeks and months. The moon then breaks this Kal Sarpa yoga where all the planets are on one side, and you again maybe really focusing on what's near and dear to you and what will make you happy, but you could be losing perspective while you do that. And that's obviously important to think about in terms of your relationships and how you communicate with others. And then the moon then builds into the full moon on the 16th, opposite the sun, of course, which has now moved into your fourth. And so this is about getting the work-life balance right, the home life, career, thinking about your needs in terms of what would make you happy, of course, but also thinking about what you need to do to make you happy. The 10th house is very much about not just career, it's about actions, thinking about the actions that need to be taken. So you can see a lot about, very personal things that are about what would make you happy and what's important to you, Scorpio. But again, if you overemphasize those things, you could easily lose perspective. The moon then joins the nodes again by the end of the month and then crosses the nodes, creates this Kal Sarpa yoga again by the 26th. And then by the 27th, all of the planets are moving into just two signs. So this is quite an intense period by the end of February and into March, where your ruling planet Mars is exalted, very powerful, but it's exalted conjunct Pluto and will later on conjunct Saturn. So you're having to use all of this energy to really overcome something in your life. And by doing that, again, you could easily bulldoze your way through here and create issues in your relationship. And so that's something to be really mindful of, and any relationship. So think about how you're communicating, especially any emails you're writing. Don't send them in haste. Don't, I would say, I don't usually like to tell people what to do, but you could easily regret, that crossword or that, email that was sent in a rush. Use the energy instead on focusing on what you want and all of the elements that are required to get what you want in the long term also, and all the other people who are necessary in that journey. Don't just think about it as you and what you want. Other people have their own needs as well, and try not to trample on theirs while you're going for what you want. And if you can get that balance right, you're making the most of these transits. And also with your energy, the balance right is not overdoing it and focusing your energy to create something, to make something happen. And that's a more productive use of the time, as opposed to Mars, which can sometimes be destructive and really sort of gung-ho about things to the point where you're not thinking things through. So really focus all your energy, Scorpio, and this could be a very, very productive time for you, going for something you want. So Scorpio, hope that's been of help. As always, I wish you the very best for the month ahead. And moving on to the next sign now, and that's Sagittarius. For Sagittarius rising and or moon sign, this month, Sagittarius, there's a lot that is breaking open for you and will, crack open. It's like, you're going to a therapist and it's like, cracks your bones. You're like, the relief there is immense. And it's kind of like that energetically for you, Sagittarius, at this time, because Mars and Venus have come together, but they'll move on by the end of the month and move into your second sign. And eventually, Ketu will move out of your 12th sign and release the hole that you've been, it's like you're in a holding pattern in many ways, with Ketu on one side, Saturn, Pluto on the other. But with all of the planets now moving into your second sign, the new moon here in your second sign on the 1st of February, Mercury stationing here along with Pluto, Saturn Sun conjunct here. There's such an emphasis on second sign that you could just be losing perspective. And in a way, you have to see it as the journey, that all of the emphasis, too much emphasis on one area of your life opens something up eventually. But again, initially, you might just feel like you're just losing perspective. It's only this thing you can think about, and you can't think about anything else. And the second sign, of course, is money, it's finances, it's family, it's food, it's what is near and dear to you. It's like obviously the closest thing to you. The first house is you. The second house is what sustains you as a person. So whether it's your money that sustains you, the food that you eat, the values that you hold that sustain you as a person, as an individual, your identity, these are important things to consider. So any kind of sense of threat to these things, any kind of things that are not working out here feel very existential, so you have the Mercury retrograde here for the last few weeks. It's stationing by the 4th. You have the new moon on the 1st. And by the 4th, Saturn and Sun are exactly conjunct. So there's some power struggle going on here between what's valuable and what's important to you, and your needs here in terms of the long term as well. And travel would be a big part of that as well, because of the Sun's involvement. And relationships and career are very important in terms of the Mercury involvement, and any kind of subconscious blocks, any saboteur involvement in this, we might also be quite clearly, seen at this time as Mercury slowly turns around and conjuncts Pluto again, while Saturn and Sun come together. There's definitely a lot of power struggles going on in yourself, maybe dealing with some issues that might be felt, again, in your family dynamic, in your financial situation. Things like that have to be worked out. But again, like I said at the top, it's like something's breaking open, something's cracking open here, and that could feel like such a relief and a release for you. Now, the month is starting with Venus and Mars coming together by exact degree in your first sign. And this could feel quite intense, or tense. It could be intensely passionate too. So that would be a great way of expressing this Venus-Mars. But of course, Venus and Mars thrashing it out here, and especially by mid-month onwards, and for the following month, especially to mid-March, you're having to kind of think about what you want and all the things that it takes to get what you want. And Venus is more hampered in this. And so you might feel that as tension, and maybe even as physical issues because of Venus ruling your 6th house. And, it being really hampered by Mars, you might feel like your desire for something, your need for something, in the future, very much in the future, is hampering, what you can do day to day. And so think about your health in terms of health is not just obviously about physical health, it's also mental, emotional health, and it's also spiritual health. It's about, are you thinking about all of the elements that's required for you to do anything? And then also get very practical about the things that you do have to do with all of those planets in your 2nd sign. Now, your ruling planet, Jupiter, is in your 3rd sign with Neptune. And thinking about this more long term, think about the things that are actually inspiring you and who you are and what you value, and inspiring you to do something and to go for something that you want, to really sort of, grab an opportunity as it arises. Thinking about, something in terms of 3rd sign, maybe travel plans, or engagement in some way, sexually even, thinking about your energy in terms of that, thinking about what would inspire you in terms of what you want to communicate, thinking about what you communicate to yourself too on an everyday basis, the inner dialogue that goes on, and trying to maybe find a more inspiring dialogue, a more inspiring self-talk. And that will go a long ways to, light the way. Because if you're getting so bogged down in the kind of details of your finances and your family issues and your own personal issues right now, you can really lose perspective and forget about that thing that's out there, shining a beacon, like bringing you, hither, right? So thinking about that long-term thing that inspires you, that you want to go for, as much as dealing with the everyday stuff that you're having to deal with now, I would say, Sagittarius. So I'm going to show you how this builds in intensity all month, and it really does build in intensity. So use this time to really use this energy and focus your willpower on achieving some goal here. Now, of course, the 5th Lord, Mars, being the most, prominent, in one of the most prominent here, shows that if you have children, there's a lot that is going to be worked out here in terms of your children and your family, children and finances, all of these things. You might be meeting with that in a very kind of Mars type way. So that means, your children might be becoming quite irate or, angry with you even. You might have to express it through that way, or you might find it expressed through that way. But again, even if you don't have children, it's about something you want to do. And, the passion and power of that kind of overcoming you in a way. It's like, I really want this so bad and I want it like yesterday, but, I have this thing I have to deal with. So the moon then joins Rahu and crosses the nodes by the 3rd to 12th of March now, or of February, pardon me. So this is breaking this Kal Sarpa Yoga with all of the planets on one side in your first, second, third house. And first, second, third is so much about you, what you want, what's important to you. And you could be obviously so focused on these things and, thinking about issues that you're having to deal with at the same time because of Venus in your sign now, conjunct Mars. And Rahu is just further emphasizing problems. Rahu in the 6th house with Ketu in the 12th, showing this need to kind of retreat, let go, rest more, rest fully. And with all of the planets on one side here, it might feel like it's not easy to get this balance right with, everyday problems rearing their head, and then you're not able to let go completely. You're not able to just kind of completely rest and recharge. So as the moon breaks this spell and somewhat, it kind of can offer a counterbalance from mid-month onwards and leading up until the full moon by the 16th. So I'll show you that here. So the moon is, of course, opposite the sun, which has now moved into your 3rd, and really highlighting that 3rd, what you want, what would give you, that spark again. 3rd house is very much like about libido. So it's like whether you're spending that energy sexually or otherwise, it's about that energy, that libido. So it's like this full moon opposite in the 9th is giving you that kind of energy to think about things in that way, like my energy, what I want to go for, but also what inspires me. And Sagittarius, you are the natural 9th sign of the zodiac anyway. So it's very much about feeling inspired and doing anything. And so it's just that you might get bogged down in the kind of the problems of everyday life. And especially at this time with Venus in your sign, that, it's good to think about these things in terms of the bigger picture, in other words, Sagittarius. So then the moon joins Ketu again and forms this Kal Sarpa Yoga as it moves into your sign by the 26th. And by the 27th, all of the planets are now moving into your 2nd and 3rd sign. So I'll just show you what that looks like. So it really emphasizes this kind of lopsided zodiac with all the planets in just 2 signs on one side of the nodes, really emphasizing again the issues around family, finances, value, and self-worth. Also, there's a big issue here around self-worth that you're being challenged to deal with. And Mars here exalted, moving through and like really bulldozing its way through Pluto, the subconscious, Saturn, the issues that you're having right now in your family or finances. Mars is asking you to really, focus all your willpower and energy on overcoming an issue here. So this is, by the end of February, Sagittarius, a good time to actually overcome these issues. But of course, be mindful of the pitfalls, which would mean that you might be bulldozing your way through and burning some bridges as you go, and destroying some relationships, and thinking about that. Think about, other people as you deal with the things that you need to deal with very personally, because this is quite intense with all the planets in one sign like this. And again, think about that bigger picture, the longer term with Jupiter, Neptune, Sun. Saturn will also move in here in the summer. Think about what is it that you want to go for? What would give you that sense of spark again? And keep an eye on that light, like that beacon of light on the horizon, and that will really get you through this period, which could be, challenging you. But again, you're up for the challenge because Mars is so powerful here, and Saturn is really powerful too. You just have to focus all your energy and willpower on making it happen. So Sagittarius, I hope that's been of help. As always, I wish you the very best for the month ahead. And moving on to the next sign now, and that's Capricorn. For Capricorn rising and or moon sign, it is all happening in your sign in February and into March, Capricorn. Nearly all of the planets are gathering in your sign. So there's so much emphasis on you that really you could easily lose perspective here. And thinking about that in terms of how you impact others, whether you mean to or not, is important. Thinking about not just yourself, but what sustains you as a person beyond your physicality, beyond your mental, emotional being, even more like your spiritual sense of self. What sustains you, mind, body, and soul, really, because there's so many planets gathering in your sign that it's really placing so much emphasis on you. And of course, as you place so much emphasis on you, you might lose, that perspective. But of course, at the same time, there's a need to focus on you. And there has been for some time, and there's a need to renew yourself. And this is a time of renewal. This is a time where things are going to start moving forward in a big way because Mercury is about to station direct. We have the new moon on the 1st of February, and then Mercury stations on the 4th. Saturn, Sun are conjunct. So that's something you have to be mindful of as well, Capricorn, and that, a turnaround, a kind of a kickstart, a newness might not feel like the kind of freshest, most vibrant new start because you might feel a bit burnt out actually because you've realized that there's so many things that you've had to let go of and you had to end and you had to think about and you had to consider and reflect on. It's like, the energy is a bit exhausted now for you, Capricorn. And that's largely to do with, of course, the Mercury retrograde and the Pluto there, the Venus Mars in your 12th house now, but also more especially Saturn Sun together by the 4th. And this new moon on the 1st. So Saturn Sun together is like, well, your ruling planet, combust, absolutely combust, not visible, can't see you. Your energy is kind of white. So, just be mindful of that in terms of the beginning of February, especially the first week, as they come together exactly by the 4th and the new moon on the 1st. All of this is showing a restart, like a reboot. But as you know, with any kind of, if you're rebooting your computer, you have to restart it. It has to shut down. So think about that, Capricorn, in terms of your own being, and that you maybe need to kind of do a reboot on yourself. And as it starts up again, it's kind of like it's reconfigured and it's like you've installed a new software now. And, without going overboard with the analogies, this is a time to really reboot. So I'll show you here on the 4th that Mercury is stationed and it's very close to Pluto, and Saturn Sun here, same degree on the 4th. So this is just a time to be really mindful of slowing down, focusing your energy, not scattering it, because it could easily get really scattered and you might feel a bit wiped because of that. The other thing, like I said, in your 12th is a Venus-Mars conjunction, and they're coming closer and closer together. By mid-month, they're exactly the same degree until the middle of March as they move into your sign by the end of February. Lots of passion, lots of energy coming in here, and lots of focus again on you. But this is a better focus in many ways because all of these other focus, the Saturn Sun conjunction, Mercury, Pluto, there's a lot of things that you're having to work out at this time in the beginning of February. A lot of subconscious things, a lot of blocks, a lot of things to overcome, to work out and review and reflect upon and reboot. But the energy is coming in a big way by the end of February. So hang on in there, in other words, Capricorn. I'll show you what that looks like now. But first, I want to show you the moon's transit as it breaks this Kal Sarpa Yoga by the 12th. So all of the planets are on one side of the nodes until the 12th. So for the first couple of weeks of February, and by the end of February again, we have this intensity of the nodes. And between your 5th and 11th, Capricorn, this is very much about what you plan to do, what you would like to do, and your long-term objectives versus your nearest and dearest, who you love. Now, if it's a child versus your friends, there might be this split or this imbalance between these relationships where you have to think about your children versus your friends, or if it's a lover versus your friends, or if it's a project versus your friends, or if it's a plan that you have versus your friends. Whatever it is, it's telling you that it's good to get a balance between the things that you really want to do for yourself, that you would love to do, versus what other people want, what other people would like of you, what other people need of you. And this is the balance to get right with the nodes here. And of course, it could be easily imbalanced because you might be having to think about what you want and then not thinking about others. Now, it's generally not something you would say of a Capricorn rising, especially because Capricorns are always thinking about others. They're always about being of service to others. But again, thinking about maybe overly focusing on one person, like a lover, your child, some relationship there that's near and dear to you that you want to expand on. That's Rahu in the fifth, versus again the bigger picture, community, society, friends, associates kinds of thing, which you might neglect because of Ketu. And again, I'm mentioning this now because it's kind of coming to a head basically in February, March, and April, because this is the last few months of Rahu Ketu here, but also Venus and Mars, which rules these signs, are coming to a head and coming together exact degree by the middle of February. So it's kind of coming to a head. It's kind of intense. There might be this kind of breakthrough also, a cracking through something. But again, just be mindful of trying to keep somewhat of a balance here, thinking about the bigger picture and the societal view of things, while also thinking about what it is you would love to do or who you love. So the full moon is on the 16th. I just want to highlight that here, with the sun having left your sign and moved into your second sign with Jupiter and Neptune. And I want to highlight a bigger long-term picture here as well with the second sign, and then the more short-term with the full moon here in your eighth sign. And that is, once you've figured out all of these things about yourself, that these personal things, you also have to think about what's sustaining you as a person. You know, if you know who you are now, well, I know this is what I need, whether it's financially, whether it's in terms of resources, whether it's your diet, whatever it is, whether it's a family or community around you. This is what I need to inspire me. That's Jupiter in the second, especially conjunct Neptune. There's a lot to inspire. There's a lot of idealism. And sun moving in here as well now is adding light to that, is adding vitality and vibrancy to that in terms of thinking about those things now and how are you sustained. The full moon in this more immediate time frame for the middle of February in your eighth sign is about thinking about what other people value, because you have to obviously in this whole period negotiate with others, whether it's your partner, whether it's any other, and what they need in the situation, because you have what you value and what sustains you personally. This is what I need, but what do you need? So that's the moon in the eighth, full moon. The moon then moves. Let me just bring this into your sign once again, and joins the nodes again by the end of the month, 23rd, 24th. And by the 26th, it's moved across the nodes and creating this Kal Sarpa again, this serpent of time, everything kind of a bit lopsided, a bit extreme. And it's getting even more extreme. And I'll show you this because all of the planets are in just two signs at this point, all of the visible planets. And actually all of the planets are only in three signs, but especially your first sign. You can see here, 6 planets in your sign by the 27th. So the end of February is quite intense for you, Capricorn. There's so much emphasis on you. And there's some good emphasis here too, though, because Mars and Venus are, you know, those things, but they're kind of fighting it out. And so, for example, if 4th and 5th house is fighting it out, well, it's like, this is what would make me happy. And this is what I need. What about you? Or 10th and 11th, you know, this is what I need to do. And thinking about what, well, how much, you know, what do I need to do to create something here, to make something stick, to give me some income even. And you're having to think about all these things and how they're all kind of jostled together. You could easily lose perspective here, Capricorn, by the end of the month. And try and keep that perspective. And in a way, it starts off the month like that and ends the month like that with the moon in Capricorn. So just be mindful of not, you know, losing perspective, making sure that you see that bigger picture always. And, you know, Capricorn, you are usually able to see the bigger picture. You are Saturn ruled, and Saturn is ruling all of these planets. So think about those long-term goals in a way, but also think about them in a more detached way. So Capricorn, I hope that's been of help. As always, I wish you the very best for the month ahead. And moving on to the next sign now, and that's Aquarius. For Aquarius rising and or moon sign, Aquarius there is a lot happening in your 12th sign in February, and especially by the end of February, with nearly all of the planets gathering in your 12th, including your ruling planet Saturn, while your other ruler Rahu is in your 4th. And Rahu actually in the 4th aspects your 12th. So it's really all kind of hinging on your 12th. And what is 12th? 12th is hidden. 12th is your subconscious. 12th is endings. 12th is sleep. 12th is letting go, surrendering. And, this is a time, obviously, in a way, coming to a head, at finishing up of something in your life that you can then finally begin to move forward and see the possibilities that are coming out of this era in your life, this time in your life. So the month begins with a new moon in your 12th on the 1st of February. And then a few days later, Mercury stations direct. So it's been retrograde all this time in your 12th, which itself is quite confusing, where you might not be very clear about where you're going in life, because it's your 5th lord. It's very much about future projections, and in the 12th it's just hidden. So I'm not really, you're not really sure of what I'm doing or anything like that, right? And then it's stationing direct on the 4th, like I said, but it's stationing with Pluto. So there's something there to overcome, some block to be aware of. And Saturn and Sun coming together exact degree by the 4th. So this could feel a bit like you're a bit wiped out after all of this processing. And because you don't feel like it's maybe that obvious a process that's been going on, it's been very hidden. It's a lot of subconscious things. You might have been really focusing on your sleep and your dreams. You might have been having to sleep more. You might feel a bit exhausted that way. You might be a bit wiped out because your ruling planet Saturn is combust. It's burnt out by the sun. So just be mindful of your energy, I would say, the first week of February, that you've gone through a lot of processes here. These are really valuable things you've been doing, even though it hasn't been maybe very obvious as to what you're actually doing. They are valuable. They are leading to the next stage, which is coming pretty soon. So Aquarius, use this time, I would say, to kind of clear the decks, do, a good spring clean, I would say, to kind of clear the decks, finish up something so that you can start anew in the coming weeks. On top of that, you have Venus and Mars together in your 11th sign, coming to exact conjunction by the middle of February until the middle of March. So, and they're staying together for a long time at the same degree for all of that month. And so this is quite a passionate expression here. And with Jupiter itself ruling these in your first sign, there's a lot more hope and optimism, a lot more buoyancy that you're feeling, despite having to, negotiate these kinds of unknowables, and the details of things. So while the details are not knowable right now, and you're not clear about things, and, it might be expressed in terms of, just having a sense of more hope in something that's been presented in some way now with Jupiter. And again, with Venus Mars conjunct in your 11th, something that gives you passion and joy and sense of anticipation moving forward. Now, Venus and Mars are coming to a head as well, like I said, so they're jostling, and fighting it out in a way for the same degree. So that could also lead to some challenges as well in relationships in general. And especially in your home and what you would want, what's happening in your home environment, especially, but also in your work environment, because it's really highlighting the extremes between the nodes now, with Rahu in the 4th and Ketu in the 10th, and the extremes imbalances that could have been possible for the last year really coming to a head now in terms of your work-life balance, your home life and your work life, whether it's having to work from home or maybe neglecting your work in favor of home, or neglecting doing something, even if it's not work related or paid work, neglecting doing something because it doesn't make you happy, and you're focusing more on what will make you happy. Now, you obviously have to focus on what would make you happy. Rahu in the 4th is absolutely focusing you on there, but Ketu in the 10th is asking you to deal with issues as well, and to deal with your responsibilities in the world. And so there's a balance obviously to achieve here that could easily go completely off balance in the next few weeks, as they are in these signs for the next few months until the middle of April. And Venus and Mars, which rule these signs, are coming head to head. First of all, in your 11th, and then in your 12th by the end of February. So it's kind of like, again, negotiating here, letting go of something, finding a balance between, your work-life balance again, and finishing up something, as I keep saying, because it's all about 12th house in February, as you will see. So I'll just bring it forward and you can see how all that pans out. But first, I want to show how the moon breaks this Kal Sarpa yoga with all of the planets on one side of the nose by the 12th. And so it offers somewhat of a counterbalance here. So you can focus on other things, perhaps. Because if you're overly focusing on all of this kind of finishing up something, what you want in life and what you need to let go of and surrender in order to get that, there's always something to sacrifice in life in anything we want. But there's such a huge emphasis, Aquarius, on you thinking about what you have to sacrifice in order to get what you want, that you might be losing perspective. So the moon here offers more of the possibility of gaining perspective. And gaining perspective around the full moon, especially because the sun now has moved into your sign from the 12th of February, and the moon reaches its fullest opposite your sign by the 16th of February. And so this balance between now not just your home life and work life, your work-life balance, but also the balance between you and your partner or you and any other, your needs versus another needs and all of that. So all of these things, there's a lot to balance here. There's a lot of kind of things hinging on February and coming to a head in a way as well, where, it's like a balancing point where, it comes to a balance and then you release that again. So the moon then joins the nodes by the end of the month on the 23rd, 24th, 25th, and then moves into the 11th sign and creates this Kal Sarpa yoga again by the 25th. But by the 27th, if I show you this here, by the 27th, all of the planets are in just two signs, and they are your 1st and 12th, mostly in your 12th. Venus and Mars now have joined Saturn, Pluto, and Mercury, and the moon here as well by the 27th, 28th, 29th of February. This is quite intense. Again, maybe losing perspective, not seeing the wood for the trees kind of thing, where you're having to, and also not seeing even the wood because, or not seeing the wood for the trees, and then maybe not seeing the trees because 12th house is very much hidden from you. It's not something you can easily see. It's your subconscious. And that's why it's given labels like hidden enemies and things like that. But really, it's just our own subconscious and saboteur. And so this time of your life has been about removing those things, removing the saboteur, or being at least aware of it, aware of where you trip yourself up, aware of where you need to let go more. And this emphasis here, of course, again, could be an overemphasis and a losing perspective completely. So just be mindful of what needs to be let go of here, because especially when you think about Mars, which is so powerful and exalted here, conjunct Pluto, and then Saturn. Mars is your third lord. So it's very much about give and take. So there's something you want, it's your third lord, but it's in the 12th, which is like you have to surrender something, you have to sacrifice something to get what you want. And because it's your 10th lord as well, there's something really important here for you to go for, and especially in terms of your work. So whatever you want to go for, there is a negotiation to be done here, something to sacrifice to get it. And that's something to think about in the long term, Aquarius. So I hope that's been of help. As always, I wish you the very best for the month ahead. And moving on to the next sign, and that is Pisces. For Pisces rising and Pisces moon sign, Pisces, all of the planets are gathering in just three signs, your 10th, 11th, and 12th signs in February. And actually, by the end of February, they actually gather in just two signs, your 11th and 12th. And so there's a real big focus on over the coming weeks and months. What is it you're doing? What is it that you want to achieve? And what do you need to sacrifice in order to get what you want? That's it in a nutshell. Your ruling planet Jupiter is in your 12th and will be until the middle of April. And so you're at a loss in a way, Pisces, and you're not really quite sure about where you're going in life, the direction your life is taking, especially in terms of career, but also personally, because it's your 1st and 10th lord in your 12th. So you're having to negotiate a lot here with your subconscious in a way, in understanding what is it that I need to get over and what do I need to surrender and sacrifice in order to move ahead now by April. And of course, you will move ahead by April as Jupiter moves into your sign, and it will be like a breath of fresh air for you, Pisces. But right now, it's just not very certain. And it's not very certain because there might be a lot of ideals as well that you have that are maybe not realistic. And that's also going to be something that changes in the coming months with Saturn moving into your 12th as well. But for now, there's an idealism that, needs to be obviously grounded in some more realism. Now, the realism is there for you to quite clearly see in your 11th house. in Capricorn, because Saturn has been there the last couple of years, and that's really put like a cap on what you think is actually even possible. So when Saturn impacts the 11th house is like how big we can think, how big we can dream as well. And when Saturn's there, it can really kind of, again, put a lid on it. So you might be feeling that. You might be feeling a bit depressed about things because Saturn aspects your sign. And now in February, everything is kind of coming to a head in a way. And that's good news, because if everything comes to a head, it means that it's going to then move on. We have all of the planets, nearly all of them, coming into your 11th sign when Venus and Mars join all of these planets in Capricorn by the end of February. So it's like such a huge emphasis on 11th. But again, it could be like a negative anticipation also because of Saturn and Pluto. The new moon happens here on the 1st in your 11th sign, the 1st of February. And then Mercury stations direct on the 4th of February, very closely conjunct Pluto this whole time, while Saturn and Sun are conjunct by the same degree on the 4th. So there's a lot of kind of power struggles going on here. And in terms of your 11th house, that's very much about what you want to make happen and what dreams you have. And, friends as well, and groups, and anyone you're associating with in terms of the bigger context, like community groups, associations, friends, circles, or just in your community around you in general in society. There's a lot to negotiate here. A lot of things that are non-negotiable as well. So that's something to be open to and keep an open mind, I think, especially through the first week of February. And again, also later on, and especially more long-term, what is it that you need to surrender in getting anything you want? That's a big thing to ask yourself, Pisces. So I'll show you here on the 4th that Mercury is now stationed very close with Pluto. Saturn, Sun are the same degree. You're having to kind of thrash it out in terms of what it is that you want and what is it that's going to take to get what you want. These are kind of big themes of Saturn, Sun conjunction. And you, again, might not be seeing very clearly what it is that you want because Saturn is not visible. It's combusts the Sun. So, and then aspecting your sign. So you're having to think about, well, I can't really see my long-term goal here. I'm not really sure of what I want to do. And even if I could see it in my mind's eye and I have this sense of what inspires me, I don't know how I'm going to go about that. So this could be what it feels like, Pisces. So just be really mindful of this slow turnaround of Mercury, this conjunction of Saturn, Sun, as things slowly start to move forward. Now, what's building in intensity here is Venus and Mars throughout the month, and they come to exact conjunction by the middle of the month. At that point, the moon will have crossed over the nodes, and so at least it breaks this sort of really intense, uncertain combination of the nodes here. And it's kind of really coming to a head in many ways because Rahu and Ketu and the 3rd and 9th house being really activated here. Your travel would be a big part of that, and maybe an inability to travel, for example, Ketu in the 9th, and your own desires maybe not being fulfilled, Rahu in the 3rd, because Venus and Mars, which rule the nodes, Taurus and Scorpio, are coming to a head, coming to exact conjunction. And so there's something having to be fought here, and fighting it out, you might feel like, you might never fight it out with anyone else. You might never even have a conversation about this with anyone, but it's like an inner struggle, maybe. But certainly be mindful in your speech in general, I would say, Pisces, and anything you're negotiating at this time, anything that feels really important, and especially in your career, any kind of work related issues here with Venus, Mars coming together. The moon, like I said, breaks this yoga of all of the planets on one side and offers this counterbalance, and leading up to the full moon on the 16th, certainly with the sun then having moved into your 12th house from the 12th of February. So this offers another opportunity for more balance. But of course, when we have an opportunity for balance, it means that there's an imbalance. And that's what imbalances are. They're opportunities for balance. But it really initially brings the imbalance between your opinion and your belief, the imbalance between what you need to do versus what you need to surrender, the imbalance between your long-term goals and your objectives and what you need to let go of. So there's a lot here to negotiate. There's a lot here to kind of juggle. And you know, when you're if you have ever tried to juggle, like obviously you might get the hang of it, but then you drop them. But then, you know, that's fine. That's the process of learning. So 12th house is very much about where you have to drop the ball a bit. So the sun now moving into the 12th house is very much a time from mid-February to mid-March to really understand what it is you need to sacrifice, what needs to end at this point for you to move on. And you will move on. There will be a new beginning in your life very soon. So what needs to end right now so that you can see your dreams come true? So, and that could be just something that needs to end in terms of your own vision. The moon then joins the nodes again. I'll show you this on the 23rd, 24th into the 25th. And then by the 26th, 27th, all of the planets now are moving into your 11th and 12th. 6 planets in your 11th and these 3 planets in your 12th. So it's this huge emphasis on just 1 or 2 areas of your life, and you're not maybe seeing the wood for the trees kind of thing. You're like losing perspective quite easily here. Now, Venus, Mars, Pluto, all of that, and then also Saturn and Mercury moon here as well, more temporarily, is placing so much emphasis on things that you have to work out and what you want long term, on, you know, in terms of your bigger ambitions, that again, if you're like not keeping the bigger picture in mind all the time, you could easily lose perspective. And again, like not seeing the wood for the trees is really what I would say about this. And again, knowing that there's something that you have to sacrifice and you're willing to sacrifice, even better, to get what you want for the long term is an important consideration here. And of course, by mid-March, the sun will have moved into your sign. And by mid-April, Jupiter will have moved into your sign. So this is really the last push, Pisces, of uncertainty, the last push for you to make something happen by learning how to let go a little bit more, while still also going for what you want. So you go for what you want, but you surrender what, you know, is no longer necessary. Also, longer term, Saturn will move into your 12th house and take its aspect off your sign by the end of April and for the summer. So this is also a release. There's definitely a release coming for you, Pisces. And if you can keep that in mind and the longer picture in mind, keep that on the horizon, and you can get through these issues now and, you know, not get too bogged down in the details of this. Thinking about, again, what inspires you and, you know, connecting in with that more so for the long term. So Pisces, I hope that's been of help. As always, I wish you the very best for the month ahead. And until next time.